Welcome to our broadcast, The Path to Be Well. To all our listeners, we're so happy that you have joined us. And also note that you can also find us on YouTube or weedwell.live. Prior to Christmas, we've had many guests, people that would come in and join our group to share their journey, share their testimony, share their stories. We have found them to be very, very informative and valuable. And some of you in our audience feel the same way and have shared that with us. So we will continue that throughout this year for some time. But we also want to introduce some modules that would provide you some tools to help gain clarity on your health. And that will be today's session. So in the next hour, it will be focused on adding clarity and regarding cannabis and treatment as an option and whether or not it's right for you. And we will bring clarity to help you make informed decisions with respect to improving your quality of life. Now, you may know someone that could benefit from this type of information. So please do us and them a favor by sharing this event. Hello, my name is Mark Trombley, a founding member of Simcoe Holistic Health and Weedwell. I want to share with you how I became involved with cannabis as a medicine. As a teenager, I did sample marijuana and quickly concluded it simply wasn't for me. I will admit that I did find myself judging those who did consume marijuana, thinking that their sole motive was to get high. It wasn't until many years later that I discovered the true medical benefits of marijuana. You see, a loved one was diagnosed with MS. After many months of symptom manifestation resulting in sleepless nights, I witnessed firsthand how cannabis can help alleviate symptoms and improve sleep. My eyes were open and my interest further increased. As a result, Simcoe Holistic Health opened its doors in 2013. And since then, we have served nearly 6,000 patients ranging from ages 3 to 93. I have personally witnessed countless individuals and families experience improved quality of life. Having said that, I also observe that cannabis treatment is simply not for everyone. And for that reason, I want to caution our listeners that cannabis treatment is not a one-size-fits-all. Determining if cannabis is an appropriate treatment requires the attention, care, and focus of your healthcare team. At Weedwell, we are committed to helping people improve their quality of life, and utilizing cannabis as a treatment option is one way to accomplish that. Joining me for this session and standing by are my colleagues Paul Calori and Doug Rawson. I'd like to take this time to invite everyone to join our exclusive Facebook group. It's a great place to collaborate with others. We will provide tips and solutions and answers to your questions, and to join by joining this exclusive group. You can join our exclusive group by going to weedwell.group. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Paul and Doug to join us now. Paul and Doug, welcome.
Mark, Happy New Year to you and to our listening audience. And hopefully everyone had a chance to recharge and refresh over the holiday break. I don't know about you, but I'm awfully charged and ready to go.
Well, that makes one of us, Doug.
We know who's carrying the ball today. Happy New Year's, guys.
Happy New Year's, guys. Looking forward to 2021 and all that is in store in every aspect, and including our live broadcasts. Such a success in 2020. A lot of experience under our belt, a lot of great stories and testimonies. And, as we stated early on, we're not pros at this, but we are learning and building on every session based on, the outcome of that session, the information that we've gathered. Would you agree with me, Paul and Doug?
Well, I would say a year ago when we first talked about the concepts, Mark, we definitely weren't pros. And I'd say today we're not either. We're probably advancing amateurs still. But we've committed to doing weekly broadcasts. And here we are. And hopefully, guys, we can go beyond one session a week to two a week shortly. But I agree. Let's continue doing what we're doing. We're having fun with it. And we're hearing a lot of good stuff, and we want to continue to give people the information that they're needing to make informed decisions.
Exactly.
I think that's where it comes back to, Doug and Mark. Professional, amateur, it's knowledge transfer and trying to share information. People can make their own decisions. I think we're doing that very professionally.
Guys, before the break, we talked about our purpose. We talked about our vision. We talked about what we're here to do. And, we've done a lot of talking about this, but just to reiterate, we are here to help with the knowledge transfer. And Paul, you just reiterated that, that's what we're here to do. And we want to give people tools. We've talked about tools in a toolbox to help people move forward. And that's our purpose. So just to reiterate, we are vigorously committed to our goal in helping 100,000 people who suffer from a chronic medical condition fulfill a better quality of life by considering the safe use of cannabis in their treatment. And we're doing that every broadcast. Someone new is learning. We've shared that the stories that everyone's joined us and shared their stories. We've told them all that they're making a profound impact on people's lives. So we're doing that. Maybe today, guys, why don't we start? We've talked about tools and toolbox and drawn a line in the sand. We've talked about the medical selfie. I don't know if you guys have reflected on that, but a lot of people have mentioned to me about the medical selfie that we should actually be talking about trademarking that. People have been saying how much they really like that. They're like, that's like, to you guys, like, wow, that's really good. I like that acronym. Or not acronym, statement. I've heard a lot of positive comments because it's something people can visualize. It's something that people understand. Just by saying do that medical selfie. And Mark, you've been doing that since we filmed core content last summer. If we use that lens, maybe today we could start with starting that medical selfie. Like we've talked about that, but let's break it down. What does that mean? Let's give people the tools in the toolbox. What are we referring to? Maybe Paul can lead us on that, but before I do, everything Paul's going to start with here, you can find our website at weedwell.tips. So that's our resources page. There's all kinds of good resources there for you to use. Go to weedwell.tips, and free downloads are available for you to add tools in your toolbox.
Okay. The medical selfie. From a core content perspective, actually, there's two portions. We'll focus on the qualitative portion today, but we do have a quantitative portion that we offer the people in core content, and those are assessments. So they actually assign numbers where you fit in certain categories, let's say relating to your pain or to your anxiety. And whatnot. But qualitatively, this is stuff you can do on your own, and that's why we're going to focus on today. Start with where you are at and how you feel. And so if your chronic condition is pain, you can start with a picture of your body, your selfie. Mark the areas where the pain is the worst. You can write down beside the areas that you mark, what does that pain feel like to you? For those viewers, you can see now there's a picture of a woman, but you would circle, in the picture of the woman there. My shoulder I'm bone on bone. I have nothing left. It's painful all the time, and you can describe it. It feels like burning. It feels numbness and tingling that goes down into my fingers. Whatever that description fits for you, and you can do that with each one of your aches and pains. So common areas that we'll see through the clinic is back. My back hurts from a car accident, workplace accident, whatever. And not only do I have pain in my spine that limits me from doing this, these are all things you can write down, but I feel it in my legs and it's harder to get around. So there's a good starting point. Do you guys want to jump in and piggyback?
Well, Paul, my only thing, and I think we know, but why is this important? And I go back to our episode with Cynthia, and Cynthia said something that was pretty empowering. And she said, if you remember, Cynthia was the nurse that her husband was encouraging her to journal her journey. But she said, in the heat of the moment, you actually don't know the aches, the pains, how debilitating something was. And she goes, it wasn't until I journaled it did I realize what you just said, the burning, the this, whatever those symptoms are. So what you're talking about is describing that it's the selfie, it's the here and now, what you're experiencing.
Yeah. So getting a handle on the here and now, to piggyback off the guests that have come on already, they were talking about experiencing these pains or these conditions for 10 or 20 years. And just as you said, to document it in the selfie context, not even the journaling context, to get it down on a piece of paper, you can kind of trace your way through. We've talked with guests as well that they're just trained on powering through. The kids need their lunch made today. I can't worry about my back because they got to get ready for school and get to the school bus. Or I need to get to work. I think we had one guest that said, I save all my energy so I can get to work because I still needed to earn the income for the family. And so, you're right, Doug. You switch things off, not on purpose, but you just forget about it and you become focused on what it is that you're going to get through that day. This is totally designed to take you 2, 3, 4 steps back so you can look at it globally. What am I actually dealing with? And when you can put your finger on what am I actually dealing with the picture in front of us here, my medical conditions, you get an idea of where you're at. And then, as I said, if we use the example of pain, you can use describers to that. It doesn't just work for pain. If we talk in the terms of anxiety, your description could be, my anxiety is when I go outside or when I have to meet someone new or when I'm in crowds. But you can quantify that based on your own situation, the same as depression. And honestly, it goes, as it says, my medical conditions, it goes across a wide array it applies to many medical conditions.
Yeah. And Paul, I guess to take off from that one more step, we've also talked in the past about unpeeling the onion, and we didn't realize that other things were surfacing until we became aware of what's surfacing. And, what was that possibly hiding? What was that perhaps not presenting? And as we start to peel back that onion, we start to see the other layers. That's when we might now start, I didn't realize I was actually, having sleep issue or whatever those other compounding issues. This then allows you to, like you said, take that snapshot and see what we're dealing with. So
the one thing we've mentioned previously as well, Doug, is this is fixed to this point in time. So if you're listening to us today or watching us today, this is your selfie on January 5th. And when we talk about peeling back the layers of onions, it's amazing the amount of people that have related to us these secondary or tertiary problems, and it's nice to have that as an idea or maybe a little bit of a framework in the background. But if you get that primary condition under control or treated a lot better than perhaps when you first met us, it does empower you to address some of those other issues or make a new medical selfie that is applicable to you on February 1st or March 1st or whatever the case may be. So it's just a place to get started. But that starting point can evolve over time as needed to each individual situation.
Yeah, I would agree, Paul. And you touched on something a while ago about just coping, where individuals could learn how to cope or actually adapt coping habits or coping mechanism just to get by their day. And that makes, I didn't come to realize that until it was shared with us. And you've touched on that already. And as well, being 2021, still early January, it's not uncommon for people to make goals for this year. So maybe this is a good time, and you've touched on this, to do a stop and reset. So yes, we've adapted coping mechanism or methods or habits, even perhaps doing the best that one might have been able to from a self-treatment perspective. So stop, reset, and this getting clear and establishing those goals in a structured manner would be a good way to accomplish just that.
For sure, Mark. To that point, I'll just carry it even a step forward with the coping. The guests they didn't come out and say it, but you could hear that when they look back to the condition they are from the condition they're in today, when they look back, they weren't doing a very good job of coping. They didn't come out and say that. Like you mentioned, though, they were doing the best they could at that time. But when they actually took time for themselves to heal themselves, they realized I was trying, but I wasn't doing a very good job. And so that taking a step back, as you say, whether it's January 1st for like a New Year's resolution or whatever, this is a good idea. But however you want to relate it, taking that step back, getting that selfie, getting clarity. We talk about be clear, be clear, be clear. Getting that clarity is going to go a long, long way.
Paul, just to take off what you're stating there, when you talked about their level of congruence to their treatment, I find, you said they didn't state. I find people tend to be, 6 months to a year. Then they start saying things like, wow, I like my new me. I like my new quality of life. I like, this has been life-changing. Usually early onset, we hear things like my aches and pains are less. But like I said, we don't start seeing the new them until sometimes, and I'll use 6 months to a year is what I tend to see, where that's when we tend to hear this has been the life-changing comments. And like you just mentioned, an important piece is documenting this will start to really illustrate that and demonstrate what was life like on this point in time. What were you dealing with? What were those? And, people said to us in the past, they had demons. Many people said they were in a very, very dark place. And until, that's become apparent, we're able to manage that. That's the move forward. So the document, Paul, that you were referencing there, the picture of the person, that doesn't need to be this template. You can draw a stick figure on a piece of paper. Just draw something. Like you said, make a notation. Where is it? Shoulder, leg, knee. Put down some adjectives. Describe in your own terms. Don't worry about fancy doctor speak. Put down your own words. Like, what is it like? How is it impacting you? And if you can only walk, to the mailbox, tell us. If you can only do this, like write down how this is impacting you here now. If it's easier, you can go to weedwell.tips and we have downloads available. And one of the first downloads is of the picture that you're describing. But the point of the matter is just start journaling this. Start making a record of what you're dealing with here and now. Paul, you talked about quantitative and qualitative. Do you have another tool that you would like to bring up?
Sure. We'll stay qualitative because, again, these are things that you can actually start as soon as we're done, because we want you listening to us. But another qualitative tool is your medication list. And so we'll meet individuals over time who can rhyme off every single one of their medications and as to why they take it, and maybe even who prescribed it to them as well. But there's others that, and this is no judgment when I say this, they'll receive a medication from the doctor because the doctor suggested it was a good idea to take it. They might have explained it during their appointment, but by the time they leave their appointment, they've forgotten the reasons, the rationales, and the whole bit. It doesn't matter if you're on one end of the spectrum or the other end. you do get a list, or you can get a list from your pharmacist. So provided you're filling your prescriptions at the same place, I can think of like a shopper's example. The back side of the current prescription has a list of all your old prescriptions. And what Doug's has put up on the screen for our viewers here is a medication record. Again, this is nice. It's at weedwell.tips, and you can download it. But if you're getting the information of what's the medication, how much you're taking, how often you're taking it, and where it says diagnosis on our sheet, it's why you're taking it, as well as who prescribed it and the date the medication was prescribed. That will give you an insight to where you're at as well. And it comes from it comes from multiple point of views. But the first one off the top of my head is we often meet people who want to substitute medications, whether they're for sleeping, depression, pain pills, any variety of pain pills, over the counter or prescribed. And so if you put this in, your January 5th medical selfie, and you know how the dose you're taking and how often, it does give you an evaluation tool, as well as how you feel, but it gives you an evaluation tool. Am I taking less? If that was one of your goals, which will be a conversation later today or another day, but if that was one of your goals, to reduce prescription medication, this is a perfect evaluation tool. In any event, it's just a way, the medication record is another part or facet of your health selfie.
Paul, all good points there as well. I just want to add a couple points. It's important that we include our over-the-counter medications here as well. So things that are not prescribed by your doctor, it's important to include here. We did an episode a while ago about that, talking about, medications can interact with an over-the-counter, vitamins, supplements. So do list them. It just helps make a more informed decision. And like you said, Paul, the diagnose and prescribe by, that's important because sometimes medications used for off-label use, or maybe it's not appropriate to wean. Sometimes people want to wean off, like you said, Paul, maybe a sleep aid, but maybe it's not appropriate because it's actually being used as an antidepressant per se, or you would think it might be used as a sleep aid. So it's important that your care team, who's prescribing, what the medicines are for, that's the background why we want that to be there. And just add one more element, the date medications prescribed is another important piece. I know from our perspective and physicians' perspective, if we're trying a medication and, a therapeutic level can take months. If we think about some antidepressants, it can be 3 to 6 months before we get into a normalized treatment. If you just started the treatment a week ago and, you're not getting the results you're looking for, it might not be a good amount of time to actually trial this. So there's a reason why these things are down here, and it's really to help make informed decisions and to support your path. And just to reiterate, you, Paul, this is another key component to your selfie. This is just one tool. Use a piece of paper, use a Post-it note, use the back of an envelope, just chart it.
Yeah, Doug, and you touched on the value of the med list, or Paul did that, and then you also suggested even over the counter, and you mentioned interaction. CBD, for example, on its own is absolutely safe, and as you've touched on, Doug, is that it can interact with some of the medication, even the over-counter medication. So this list is a good reference, but a good point for the prescribing doctor to, at a quick glance, be able to pick up on whether or not any of those could, be affected in a negative way. So very, very crucial, and we can't state that enough.
If I put on my my paramedic lens, if I put on my working on the road lens as well, Paul, how many times has it been helpful in the emergency setting to understand what's there as well? So, if you're incapacitated, you're not able to reiterate your story. This document alone is probably one of the most important pieces of information pre-hospitally and in the emergency department that the doc would look at, emergency room physician would look at, to manage your care and figure out, we just talked about interactions, about any possible issues with other treatment modalities. So this tool is actually a tool that we would highly recommend. Copy it, keep a copy in your wallet, in your purse, in your glove box, and on your fridge. But this is an important tool on the reiteration of your story, your journey, your health journey, specifically if you're not able to tell people on your own. Paul.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, and that's one of those now. It transcends, I mean, all of these tools are great just if you just want to have them, but that's an important one. You just think of the amount of times that one is asked for their medications when they go into a doctor's appointment, a specialist appointment, or whatever, and it's just a simple one sheet of paper as opposed to trying to remember. Outside of the ambulance world where any number of issues could happen that you can't communicate that. So,
just on the logistical end too, Paul, I know, at our clinical appointments, when we're running our brick and mortar place a year ago, we're coming up to, guys, that we moved out of there due to COVID. We traditionally would always ask patients to bring their bottles with them, all their medications, all their supplements, and we would look at every bottle, physician would look at every bottle and see what it is. On the logistical side, there's always a risk to that. Well, I know you would be able to reiterate this from the ambulance world, but things do go missing. When it goes from your living room to the ambulance stretcher to the ambulance to the hospital emergency room, and then moved multiple times at the hospital, whether it's going for x-rays or lab work, and then moving from this bed to another bed, health cards have gone missing, so have medications, and that's an inconvenience and a cost. So keeping this document up to date only serves you and serves your care team. Paul, one thing you mentioned on one of our last broadcasts, I don't remember which one, but one of our last broadcasts, you mentioned that, a lot of these tools that we're providing, we're offering, has nothing to do with cannabis. And you really mentioned, if we're talking about getting clear and making that health selfie, we don't even talk about cannabis. And the information we're sharing now and providing and kind of these nuggets and tips has nothing to do with cannabis. If you're dealing with chronic condition of some sorts, just take a couple of these steps and help move yourself down the path to wellness. That's all we're here trying to do. Later, as we get into the path more, we talk about considering if cannabis is the right treatment option for you. Great. But if not, and you just use these tools to help you with that, all the better. So just to reiterate what you said, Paul, I'm just stealing a little bit of your thunder. Just, these are tools to help people. So, Paul, you introduced a couple of these tools. You talked about a couple of these templates that we can use. Again, we can find those at weedwell.tips. When you go to weedwell.tips, we have a resources page, and on that resource page is all kinds of tools that we have put on there. If there's more that people would like, let us know. So the ones we're talking about right now are inside Be Clear. You can simply click on the condition. So my medical condition, you can download that. And we just talked about the medical record. So that's where you can find those. What other tips and strategies and tools do you want to share today, Paul? You're muted, Paul.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I think given the onion comment that we've had come up many times, all these conditions lead to poor sleep. Sleeplessness, and it can be falling asleep or it can be staying asleep. But inevitably, every single guest has described being exhausted in one way or another. And so, do you want to talk a little bit about sleep diaries as a resource?
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. And let me just pull it up here because you threw a curveball.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't have that one ready, but give me 10 seconds and you can continue talking about it.
Okay.
Well, yeah, Paul, if I can just pitch in here a little bit. Yeah, you're right. Usually any of those symptoms or combination thereof, patients are having some difficulty sleeping because of discomfort related to pain, or in the case of anxiety, stress, all of those things, right? And we've heard a comment about, I can't stop the brain from going 100 miles an hour. And patients have also shared that the next day, if you have not had a good night's rest without any of those conditions, that alone makes it difficult to tackle the day, especially if there's maybe children in the house, or a demanding job, demanding mentally or even physically. Sleep is such a key component to wellness. It sure helps the next day look a little bit brighter, and being able to tackle face on whatever the day might bring. So I totally agree.
And just for our people, if you're watching us, if you're listening, you wouldn't catch this, but Paul just sent me a little note saying sorry because I made a comment, he threw me under the bus. Just took 10 seconds, Paul. It's no big deal. I have up some documents I thought we'd talk about, but you're right on cue with the sleep. So we do have a couple of resources. We have a sleep hygiene 2-page handout. We also have a sleep diary. Paul, you want to go over the sleep hygiene, just the bullet points, and people can use that as a reference point, and then I'll slide over the diary?
For sure. So one of the reasons I think it's important that we mention this is, people come into cannabis wanting to help with their sleep problems. But before we even start introducing a medication, cannabis, into the person to help with this, there are a number of things that you can do. And you know what? If you end up successfully treating your sleep issue before you've even introduced cannabis, isn't that much better? The medication should be the last resort. So to jump in, we talk about keeping a sleep schedule, and I guess this is appropriate given the Christmas break and COVID, and this is where things go a little sideways when the kids are home for the holidays or whatever. We all tend to stay up a little bit later, maybe sleep in a little bit more. And then as we figure out, those of us with kids, it's hard to get back into that routine. But this is why keep a sleep schedule is on there. And try to keep it as much as possible if you're a Monday to Friday person, even on the weekends. That's your internal clock that begins to work with that. Your bedtime ritual, and that can be anything from baths to reading a book, but something that's going to set you up to relax for a good night's sleep. Those of us who like our naps, if you need a nap, really need a nap, keep it short, like no more than 30 minutes, but generally not after 2 or 3 in the afternoon. You're going to find that it's harder to get restful come bedtime. So exercise seems to have a handle on many health benefits, sleep as well. We talk about your sleep area being quiet, dark, relaxing, and of a comfortable temperature. Make sure you have comfortable mattress and pillows as much as possible. And if you think about it, the amount of time we actually spend in our beds over the course of a lifetime, that's an important one. Caffeine. So we talk about avoiding caffeine even after lunch. Caffeine can stay or have effects in the system for quite a long time. And they're not going to be sleep promoting benefits. So in the evening, if you find yourself hungry, just a light snack is usually enough. You don't want to load up when you're nearing to go to bed. Here's an important one for our world today. You might not have seen a few years ago. But shut down your electronics at least 30 minutes before you want to go to bed. Part of that is as much just turning your mind off, right? Stop looking at the clock. So this is one that, I'll use my own experience, I struggle with. And we need to get into a comfortable place, and generally within 20 minutes. If you haven't found that place, and you haven't fallen asleep, or you found yourself, you woke up, you had to go to the bathroom, whatever the case may be, and you lay back down and 20 minutes has passed again, it's probably time to change your environment. And all that means is go to a quiet place and try essentially your bedtime ritual again. So whether it's look at a book, it's a quiet activity. It's not something designed to get you amped up, because then you're going to go back to that bed, wherever that's at, and attempt to sleep again. But if you can't do it within 20 minutes, take a break from it. And then this will tie into our next page, but keep a sleep diary. Write down what you experienced during your sleep at night. This is important, from a clinical standpoint, whether it's for cannabis or sleep issues related to apnea or other issues. When the doctor goes and asks you, well, how's your sleep? Well, I don't sleep well. That doesn't, it makes sense to you, but that doesn't tell the doctor a whole lot. Being able to say, I can fall asleep, but every time at 2 o'clock I wake up, that gives a little more direction. Or I wake up and I'm sweating, or my mind's going and it doesn't shut off, or any other description that applies to you. But you want to be able to journal it, and that's why we talk about having a sleep diary.
Paul, well done. Like you said, these are all, we're just adding to the health selfie right now. And I loved how you ended this talking about there are a number of reasons medically what could be impacting your sleep. And it could be medications. It could be the sleep apnea. There are a number of other things but we don't know unless we have good data. And like you said, all of this is to help give you good data to make that medical selfie, because you've said this twice already today, Paul. You may not need cannabis. You may not need antidepressants. You may not need a sedative. You may need a CPAP device. We don't know what you need, but this is given the tools to help you make an informed decision and help you with your care team make an appropriate treatment plan for you. So well illustrated for everybody. And
to your point, I totally agree, Doug, is it goes back to a comment I made earlier about a coping mechanism that perhaps a patient has, developed their own, whatever that is, but it's not really targeting the issue. It just helps them cope with it and get by, basically. So very, very valuable. And not in every case, but I think you guys would agree that in many, many cases, when a patient comes to see us and they give us a list, often it's sleeping because of the reasons we've already talked about and how much it has an impact on their well-being. And so often, if that patient is suffering from depression, high stress, and anxiety, for example, we will typically start treating the daytime column conditions. And more often than not, that same patient is able to achieve much better sleep by doing that. So dealing with the daytime issues, once they get, that regimen underway for a week or 10 days or 2 weeks, is that it's not unusual that they are sleeping better. Is it enough? That's a case-by-case thing, but it's certainly a good place to start.
So, Paul, you mentioned everything on the sleep tip sheet we just talked about, and this diary basically reiterates the elements you spoke about. And I assume this is used to journal tonight's sleep, last night's sleep, tomorrow night's sleep, and to help give an idea about what could be causing the sleep issue, and let's call it make a diagnosis on your path moving forward.
It's exactly it. And so, it's for those viewers, you can see it's just a checkbox, and check is yes or no check, no. And I think it's important to figure out, or not figure out, understand that if you put the 10 or 12 check marks in on Monday's box, Nothing's probably going to happen Tuesday. Like, this is an ongoing thing. It's not a day-to-day thing. Oh, I had a little caffeine on Monday, and we're looking for trends. And so we have a whole week laid out on this sleep diary. But in theory, if you want to figure out if your sleep is improved by utilizing some of these or all of these techniques, you want 2 or 3 of these pages full of check marks. And then if you're not seeing a noticeable improvement, it will allow you to move forward in a different way. Anything you want to add to that, because we've gone through the
Yeah, I think we're on the right page. And Paul, again, you said this 2 episodes ago. This is, regardless of what someone's chronic medical condition is, these are tools to help you move forward and getting clear on your medical condition and what your treatment modality looks like moving forward. That doesn't necessarily mean it's got to be cannabis or any other prescription tools. It could be just changing your sleep environment like you identified. I want to reiterate, though, how good of a tool this actually is. And Paul, I know you had a big hand in this. I know Danielle graphically designed this, reiterates back to the tip sheet we just did, but I just want to give 2 real quick stories. And one story was someone that we saw back in 2016. It was a patient we saw in 2016 who came to us with a chief complaint of wanting to use less cannabis. They were smoking 5 grams of cannabis a day. Smoking 5 grams of cannabis a day. They were spending almost $2,000 a month on dry cannabis. And they came to us saying, can we help? And one of the goals was to use not 5 grams, use less, healthy alternative as opposed to smoking. But it was all about sleep. Everything was about sleep. The patient was actually youth. And, one of the first things Dr. Atterberg of the time, quick question was, what's your nighttime routine look like? And they were on Xbox until 3:00 every night. It was, the prescription at that time was get off the Xbox. Don't put your Xbox in your room and don't be playing, video games until all hours of the night. Taking that out of the room made a dramatic impact to that. But like you said, Paul, we don't see these patterns until we document it. Another one that we've seen a lot, and again, it was through a journaling exercise, was again another kid. When I say kid, it's based on the prescriptions. Anyone under the age of 25. The last one I just told you was probably about 15. This one is about 15 to 18 as well. But what the parents found when they came is they wanted a safer treatment option instead of using a sedative or over-the-counter sleep aid. That's why they thought cannabis was better. But when we had them journal this, we found that they were drinking lots and lots of Red Bull to stay awake, to study and cram for tomorrow's exam or whatever it was that was going on. And they weren't contributing Red Bull or these power drinks to power through that as a caffeine. Everyone was thinking about that as coffee. So we want to, caution that caffeine on its whole is what's causing the alert level with people. So, just like Paul said, just pause everything. Don't worry about finding the solution in the treatment modality. Let's just take the selfie. And Paul, you said take 2 or 3 weeks. Like, take 2 or 3 weeks and just take your time and journal this. Paul, you've mentioned this a few times. Like, most people can deal with this condition for weeks, months, most times years. And 3 weeks of journaling to get a really good selfie is only going to serve you better. Well, guys, Paul, you have any other tricks, or you think that's enough for everybody today?
How many curveballs am I going to throw at you?
Well, I'm ready. I got my catcher's mitt on now.
No, this journaling, great exercise. And, if only from the point of view, think when you go into your doctor's office, you usually get like 5 minutes. And if you're not ready to go with that information, they're on to the next issue. And so when you can really qualify what's going on, really give details to what's going on, it really assists your doctor, your care team to help you. That's all.
Good job, Paul.
Think we covered a lot of good elements in creating, certainly the qualitative elements to creating your health selfie. A nice picture of yourself, and we can talk about what that means going forward at a later date.
I know from my view, I think we've covered everything I think we can cover. Mark, I'll let you close, but our goal here is to help improve 100,000 lives by providing tools in the toolbox. I like that we haven't talked about what are those treatment modalities, but we want you to have these tools to make informed decisions. And Mark, you started off by saying, great power in telling stories and people sharing their stories. And when we continue to do that, and I know, Mark, you're continuing to have people to be here and other partners and, both sides of the coin, but we also want to provide some of this knowledge transfer information as well, so people can make their own path and journey with their own care team. So good job, guys.
Yeah, good job for sure. So to all our listeners, if you've seen value in the session today, we'd like to hear from you to get that feedback, any suggestions or recommendations on how we can further improve, and that's an ongoing process. So we really value your input and your feedback. To all of our audience, I'd like to remind everyone that the information that we share is somewhat generic and may not be specific for your condition. And we always suggest that it would never serve as a diagnosis or treatment plan for yourself or for a loved one. As a result, you should always speak to your healthcare provider about the appropriateness of cannabis as a treatment option. And for those who have taken steps in improving their quality of life, congratulations. And we really applaud that. It's a first step, and we'd like to be part of that journey. And your journey is your journey. And as long as you're taking some steps forward and improving the quality of your life, you should be proud of the progress that you're making. At Weedwell, we are committed to helping people improve their quality of life, and utilizing cannabis as a treatment option is one way to accomplish that. So, gentlemen, good session today. I look forward to the next one. On behalf of the three of us here, those behind the scenes, until the next time we meet, be well. Thank you for joining me. I'd like to take this time to share with you how I first became interested and then involved with cannabis as a medicine. My name is Mark Tremblay, a founding member of Simcoe Holistic Health, Ontario's first medical clinic dedicated to the treatment and care of those patients considering cannabis as an option. As a teenager, I did sample marijuana and quickly concluded that it simply wasn't for me. I'll admit I did find myself judging those who did consume weed, thinking that their sole motive was strictly to get high. It wasn't until many years later that I discovered the true medical benefits of marijuana. A loved one was diagnosed with MS. After many months of symptom manifestation resulting in sleepless nights, I witnessed firsthand how cannabis can help alleviate symptoms and improve sleep. My eyes were open. My interest further increased. As a result, Simcoe Holistic Health opened its doors in 2013. Since then, our clinic has operated under 4 Health Canada regulations and served nearly 6,000 patients ranging from ages 3 to 93. I have personally witnessed countless individuals and families who experience improved quality of life. Having said that, I've also observed that cannabis treatment is simply not for everyone. As we continue to grow and expand our reach, Simcoe Holistic Health is rebranding to Weedwell. For more information, visit us at weedwell.com or follow us on our social channels. Till the next time, be well.